often they're more open to suggestions. But often then, to answer this question that's on the chat, I will turn the conversation back to them and say, what do you think is the best thing for you? Often people actually know the best things to do for their own life. At times I give them, back to being as a singles ward bishop, my suggestions, my input, but often that came after they felt like I was really on their road. A priesthood blessing is often a wonderful way for priesthood holders to help someone know what Heavenly Father's will for them is. I recognize there's a chat on here about Satan.
Richard, can I go back really quick?
Sure.
To Janet, I know that you're a missionary, but we also have parent friendship lunch with Lisa's on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. And it is a really, really good, safe place for all of us. And I think that it would be good, that you would like it. Tuesday, it's at noon, and you can, I'm Kayleen Christensen Barney. You can reach out to me, or you can get on encircletogether.org / online, and there should be one / lunch with Lisa. And I facilitate the one for tomorrow, and it is a really, really good group that we do we get to do this now, and we get a lot more people because of Zoom, and we're able to get a lot more people. So it really is a really good, great place for healing. And there's all kinds. There's people in, out, trying to do all the above, and it is just a really good support group. So that was me. So Richard, I just wanted to say that because again, I love Encircle and it's wonderful. But Richard, go back to another one of your questions.
There's a thread in here about Satan, and I recognize that there's a segment of LDS people that feel any kind of discussion around LGBTQ is outside the doctrine of our church, and is Satan deceiving us or people into being LGBTQ? And I just recognize there's a segment of people in our faith that feel that way, and that's probably all I can say about that. And my book, if people choose to read it, have hundreds of quotes from LDS leaders and I'm using those quotes in a way to try to help us use the teachings of our leaders to be able to better understand LGBTQ people, especially the quote from President Ballard, who uses the vocabulary LGBTQ and says we need to do better than we have in the past so that everybody has a spiritual home. So to me, that's a charge from our leaders to do exactly what we're doing on this call and what Encircle's doing and what you as parents are doing. Just some of the myths, I think, are one of the myths I'd love to address is pornography, because that's one of the things that I think I assumed that everybody that became gay was either they were a victim of sexual abuse as a child or they were exposed to pornography. And that was something that I learned is not true. We have some quotes in the book from people that have never been a victim of being sexually abused and are gay. So I call that kind of the nice tidy box thinking, that we kind of think, well, something happened here to cause someone to be LGBTQ. God wouldn't ever do this. So I believe pornography, which I invite everybody not to be a part of. So I'm inviting everybody not to have a problem with pornography, but to me, it's a window into someone's sexual orientation and not a way to change orientation. There's a story in a podcast we do of an LDS father in Houston during the night found his 13-year-old son looking at pornography, gay pornography, and he handled that so well. He just invited his son to come up, and his son came out to him that night, and it was a parenting home run because he learned he had a son that had a pornography problem that he needed to address, but he also learned his son is gay. His son ended up serving a mission. His son is still gay. He's active in the church, but the father didn't sort of link pornography. He just helped him understand that his son is gay. So that's just an example of kind of something we might say that would add to the burden. So pornography to me is an insight into someone's sexual orientation versus change it. Just like being with sexual abuse is more complicated. There are some LGBTQ people that I visit with that may wonder if that's the reason they're gay. There's some that I visit with that are clear that they have not been sexually abused and they're still gay. So every story is a little different there, but we shouldn't take one story and sort of say that's the reason. We should just sort of honor everybody's story and do all we can to lift their burden. So that's just a thought on that one.
I have a question about, so when parents find out their kids are gay, often there's a kind of grief mixed in with their emotions that maybe they won't have grandkids.
Right.
And it's similar to if you found out your kids had struggles with infertility. So in that sense, you can see how parents might see it as a disability or as a problem, because it means, like infertility, it means there's not the possibility of kids coming from that relationship.
Yeah, I mean, you used a really good word, Jeff, grief. I think parents, and some of you are these parents, I think you go through stages of grief that you need to be validated, where your hopes and dreams for your child are changing if they come out as gay or trans. And I think you may need to go to a therapist to sort of deal with that, because that's a road I've never walked. And I think it's a legitimate feeling, but I think that's part of getting to acceptance, is that I need to accept the reality of our family situation. And I have a gay child that may step away from our church, who may not. But I need to sort of develop skills to walk with that child and help them make thoughtful decisions as they move forward. But I may need to, concurrent with that, go through my own journey as a parent to sort of get better tools to deal with this.
Well, I think that's an important part too, but more than not just the relationship with the church, but also just the element of kids. I think that doesn't get brought up a lot. It's not maybe the easiest thing to talk about, but under the surface, I think a lot of people do that is a big aspect of what it means to not be attracted to the opposite sex. Is that if whether you have kids in some way in the future, it's not going to be with your beloved in a biological way. And so in that sense, it ties into the deeper feelings that come along with infertility as well. That's just an element I don't hear talked about a lot.
I don't know too much about that. I don't know if there's any LDS parents or any parents on here with LGBTQ kids that want to answer that. So that's, I don't have a good answer for that, Jeff. It's just, I would hope that even if those gay kids get into same-sex marriage and have kids in that marriage, that the parents accept those grandchildren just like any other grandchildren. I think, I look at part of the cornerstone of the LDS Church as strong families. And to me, doing everything we can do to keep the family circle together, even if someone is walking a path outside the doctrine of the church, is what I should do as a family. So I shouldn't reject my gay kids. I think we're learning that through the stories in the church and Becky McIntosh's book. But even things like kids and grandkids, we should keep those family members as part of the family circle. Because I think then we do better as families and people don't feel the sting of rejection. And I think they do better in society and contribute to society.
Can I make a comment to that, Richard? One of the things I love about Tom Christofferson's story is because his parents were willing to love him and his partner, and they did not alienate him. So 40 years later, when Tom felt a desire to come back to the church, he didn't have a whole burden of the cruelty and the unkindness that people had said to him. And the way that his family had treated him was not an impediment to him returning. Now, in saying this, I'm not saying that that is the goal. That's not why we love our children, because we hope someday they will return. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying when there is not a layer of animosity and unkindness that can keep people from coming back if they want to, that's the great lesson of Tom Christofferson's story. So often we feel like it's our responsibility to set people straight, to call them to repentance and to tell them what they ought to be doing. And I know of no place where we are called to do that. I've got my own problems to worry about, my own sins, my own mistakes. I have no business trying to set someone else straight. And when I do, I create a barrier between me and other people, and possibly between God and other people.
I think we have the Hanson window lit up. Can I try not to talk too much, but I just want to speak. I'm going to make myself really vulnerable here, so please bear with me. When I walked into the doors of Encircle for the first time, I felt such a powerful feeling that this is the right place to be. And it's a place where, for those of you who haven't had the absolute blessing of being in that place, it's the place where I sat back and listened and heard the voices of my gay brothers and sisters that I happen to share this time in history with. And I wasn't there to teach them. I didn't have to talk about doctrine or religion. And it was such, and still continues to be, such a place where I have learned. And as I have incorporated that into my personal religious practice and spoken to God about what I'm learning there, my love for people has expanded. And I want to say that the Encircle community, knowing that I am an active LDS person, has never treated me with anything, even though some of them are hurt so deeply by the things they hear at church or the way they've been treated. I have been treated with such love and respect. And I want to just say that there's this like interesting, all the Zoom meetings that we've done, I hate to say this, but the messages that are going on back and forth in the chat room are so hurtful to me because they are the arguing that's starting to happen. I'm sad. I'm sad for the people that feel that this is what we need to be doing. So for all of my Encircle people and my gay folks that are on this chat and have seen this argument going on, I love you. God loves you. Richard, I'm so grateful for the work that you're trying to do. And I just feel like the luckiest person in the world that I have a gay son, and that led me on this journey to find the LGBTQ community to be some of the most wonderful friends that I've ever had. And I'm grateful that they're so patient with me and kind to me and truly examples of Christianity. And that's all I'm going to say. I love you. Mwah.
Sue, you're great. And there's a question on the chat about trans. I want to just talk a little bit about that. And I'm not trans, so this is bad always to have an ally talking about LGBTQ, but Nika Allgood and her transgender son Grayson he framed it up, and I put this in the book. It's like being car sick. We all can relate to being car sick and just stuck in a car when and just that motion sickness. Gender dysphoria is the distress somebody feels where their gender identity doesn't match their biological sex. We can end car sickness. We get out of the car, we take a pill. We want to do anything we can to eliminate car sickness. No one on this call enjoys car sickness. So that's what gender dysphoria is. It's that pain. It's actually pain someone feels from how they feel about themselves. They look in the mirror and what they see is not how they feel. And so transitioning is the process to end or manage that dysphoria. For us, it's getting out of the car. For a transgender person, it's the stages of transition. And each transgender person does that personal to them. And some are within church teachings. The latest church teachings allow for the taking of hormones, and that would not get you in trouble. That's the right word. That's a change. I believe the latest church teachings allow you to decide to go to Relief Society or Elders Quorum. And it's not based on your biological sex. I'm not positive that's true, but I think that's on the website. But don't quote me on that. But there's other elements that may generate church discipline, like medical surgery, top or bottom surgery. And so that's part of the question, was specific about surgery. And that does generate church discipline. I'm not exactly sure what church discipline. It may not exactly say that in the church handbook, but I support the church teachings on that. So I'm not saying the church shouldn't discipline people. So I support the church on that. But I recognize every transgender person has to walk this road unique to them. And if someone's choosing between suicide and levels of transition, which is real for some people, then they need to sort of make the decisions they need to make to find emotional health, even if it takes them outside the teachings of our church. Once again, I never invite someone to do that. I never proactively pave that path for them. But if I'm their trusted friend, I would be aware that's something that may be their path to be able to be emotionally whole and healthy, and just support them and leave that at the Savior's feet. So that's just kind of a segment on transgender Latter-day Saints.
That's perfect. Hey, Papa Ostler, Stephanie's been trying to get back on. She wants to deeply say she's sorry for that interference that we had no idea that was going to happen. So we will work on that, and she's really, really sorry. She's been trying to get back on and she can't get back on. So
I just unlocked it, Kaylee.
you unlocked Steph?
I just unlocked the meeting.
Oh, you want me to tell Stephanie she can get?
Yeah.
Okay, then does anyone else have a question or anything else? We just want everyone to know that we love everybody's space that they're in, and we don't want hurtful things going on too. So we really appreciate Richard coming and helping us also. Any more questions, or do you want something to say something else, Richard?
Yeah, one of the questions that came ahead of time, and I hope I get to them all, is it's a false, I believe it's a false statement that more people are LGBTQ now because of increased cultural acceptance or more conversations or even clubs at school. So that's one of the narratives I hear, is there's a lot more people coming out. Satan's real and wants to destroy people. So I don't want to take that off the table, but I don't think he's confusing people into being LGBTQ. So why are there more people coming out? And I think it's a maturing of society. I think it's positive messages about LGBTQ people that are hearing things about people like them, even in their own homes. Some of you are parents that have said kind things about LGBTQ people, allowing your own children to come out to you earlier. It's a big deal to come out at 13 versus 23. 10 years of being out and having parents walking that road with you versus age 23 and walking that road alone is a big difference in that child's emotional health and their feelings about God usually, and even their feelings about the church. So I just believe that God's always been making about the same number of people LGBTQ. And the only thing that's really changed here is society is saying kinder things. And so people feel like they can come out earlier. And I think that's a maturing of society. and society going in the right direction. Now, there may be some that disagree with me on that, but that's not the way I see it at this point. And I'm grateful that more are coming out. I'm grateful when people come out in their wards and their wards just love them. If you're single and out in a YSA ward and you come out, people quit asking if you're dating, at least the opposite sex, and that makes church more of a balm of Gilead for you. They sort of understand where you are, and then they can sort of support you in that journey and help create a square peg for you there versus the cultural questions that a gay person will get asked. So coming out often isn't about leaving the church or turning your back on or turning to Satan. It's just about needing to belong, and takes a lot of courage.
So true.
Sorry for asking so many questions. I have one more. So there have been surveys in the US, the UK, and Canada over the last couple of years that were repetitions of previous surveys, and they found that support for LGBT rights has actually fallen in all three of those countries. In the US in particular, it was among young people, the youngest group that had fallen, so high school student age, Gen Z. Give any insight into why that would be, how we should think about that?
I've heard of that, to be honest, Jeff, but I've also heard studies that show of increased support. So I don't quite know what to make of that.
Well, it had been increasing very steadily until about 2018, and then it seems to have plateaued and even declined.
And so I don't know the answer to that. My circles, and this is anecdotal, if I'm using that word right, I'm not a researcher, is I just continue to see generally more acceptance and more understanding. Jana Reese's book is the only LDS book that I'm aware of. Well, maybe Greg Prince's book, where she tries to quantify LDS feelings on same-sex marriage over time, and has talked about how that seems to be increasing. But I don't have that.
Just
book.
In the U.S. though, too, right?
That is just in the U.S. So my personal feeling is they'll be generally over time. Just as people get to know LGBTQ people, I think their feelings change, and more people are getting to know LGBTQ people. And that's, I think people on this call know that. That's where certainly I couldn't have done what I've done talking to straight people. Obviously, I had to talk to LGBTQ people and their parents, and as more people do that, more people change. And that gives me hope for the future as we get to chapter 40. As a church and as a society, everybody should feel the balm of Gilead, and everybody should feel how they're created is needed and equal, and all those words I've used before.
Richard, I think that you are doing amazing things, and we love you, and we love the things that you're doing. And you're just doing such great things. And it's so nice to hear the things that you have to say, because it's so true. I mean, our kids are perfect, and they're not broken, and you're doing such a great job, and keep doing it.
And if you look in the mirror and feel you're broken, or you need to change, or God doesn't love you, just don't make good decisions. If it's okay, I'll tell a story about my high school reunion. I sat in my 40-year high school reunion from Highland High School this summer, and we did that slideshow of everybody that was gone. And at the 40-year reunion, it gets a little longer. And one of the guys that's gone was gay. And I didn't know how to be his friend in high school. As an active LDS person, I distanced myself from him. He was LDS and gay. And I just thought that's what I was supposed to do. And I recognized he was a really good guy. And the only thing he could really do was go to a big metro city. That's where he could fit in the late 70s and the early 80s. And that often led to just bad behavior. And he died of AIDS. And I just recognize that's a road that happened to a lot of people in that era. There was so much pain, and they needed to deaden that pain, and often that turned to alcohol and drugs and could lead to a pretty fast life. And that same week, I did a podcast with a young man, and I forget his name, but he's the student body president at Corner Canyon, a high school in Salt Lake City, and a star member of the basketball team. And he came out as gay in Salt Lake City at a high school. He's not LDS. And he did a podcast with me. And we talked about all his straight buddies on the basketball team and all his buddies that are LDS. And one of his LDS buddies that's preparing for a mission came and with him. And I just looked at this guy and I thought, he's not going to end. He feels like who he is accepted. And at some level, he wants to marry a man. And at some level, I felt at peace that option was available to him to give him hope in his life. And I recognized that option was not available to that young man who died from my high school. Now, I'm careful when I say that because I'm not saying same-sex marriage is something I'm inviting people to do or prescribing it for gay Latter-day Saints. I'm just on some level at peace that is an option for people that feel that is their road, to not die and to be able to find a partner to just share their life with. Just like my wife and I have each other to share our life with. So that's the complicated part of the space. One LDS father, Bryce Cook, talks about his two gay sons, and he says they're in a double bind because they love the church and would love to share their life with somebody. And sharing their life with someone is more than sexual intimacy. It's every part of our marriage we share, and that's not available to Bryce's son. So what does Bryce do? He took the double bind off for his children. And he says, I will keep if you feel that's your path, to find a same-sex partner, you'll be a full member of our family and we will love you. And I think that's the right thing to do. So that's a complicated spot. It's sort of the tension of this, and that's how I'm navigating it. And some will be happy with what I said, and some may feel that that's too far as an active Latter-day Saint. And I'm okay with all of that. If you feel either way, it's just the nature of this space, and I'm doing it the best way I can. And not everybody needs to do it like me or feel that your lane is my lane. Some of you may feel that's not my lane.
Yeah.
I know some of you may feel so much pain and anger to the church that people like me that are in the church or talking positively is activating to you. And I honor the pain you feel and recognize you're in a different lane. And even you LDS parents that have stepped away from the church, I just recognize that happens. And it's a really tough job. Sometimes we create a false dichotomy when your kids come out as gay and you're active in the church, that you need to choose between your kids and the church. And that's a false dichotomy. And I think when your kids come out, and even if they leave the church, you need an increased measure of love directed your way. Because if you feel judged by your Mormon congregation for supporting your gay kids, and you now feel your fellow Latter-day Saints don't talk to you or they're judging you, it's more likely you'll leave too. Well, you need more love and support as you're navigating an incredibly complex road. And we shouldn't be creating a narrative that, to be a great Latter-day Saint, you've got to choose between the church and supporting your gay kid. You should be, if you want to, you should be able to do both.
Yes, I totally agree. Also, really quickly, can we have everybody put your faces back on the screen? And can you also put your pronouns if you know how to do that? We're supposed to put our names and our faces when we start this, and I don't know, somehow they got taken off, but if we could do that, that would be great too. But Richard, you're so right, and that is so true, and we need to respect that, and we need to be also love more and do more and love and let everybody have their space, and it's everybody's journey. And we really love that you're here for us. And again, I hope that everybody learned something from this and is coming away from this. But I don't think that we should be mean to each other. I think that we need to love one another. And Richard is such an example of that. Is anyone else want to say something?
Kayleen,
Yes.
this is Amber.
Hi, Amber.
Hi. Richard, thank you so much. As a member of the Encircle staff, I just want to tell you how impressed I am by you. I haven't ever heard you speak in person, but I'm also a mama dragon. I have a gay son, and he's the light of my life. And I've been on this entire call, and I just want to thank all of you who have shown integrity and kindness and love, because ultimately, I think what I've learned in my journey is that's what can bring us all together. There's pain involved in having a gay son, but I have kids that aren't gay, and there's pain involved in that too. And that's why I love Encircle, because I can promise you that we promote and we live no sides, only love. And the hurtful, the mean, the anger, it's gonna come, but I know it comes from a place of fear, because there's really only fear and love. And Richard, what you're doing, I don't mean to speak for you, but I can imagine it can't always be easy. But thank you. Thank you on behalf of my family and my gay son and Encircle for taking a risk and teaching people to love, because like ultimately that's all we want. We just want our kids to be loved. We want to feel love. And I'm very, very grateful for what you've said tonight. It can't be easy, but I appreciate it.
You know, sometimes I recognize it isn't easy, and I go on long walks, but then I'm reminded of Stockton.
Yeah.
We talked about at the beginning, who died by suicide. He was a square peg trying to fit in a round hole. And I recognize that our LGBTQ people have a much harder road than we do as allies, as allies know. And
Allison and George were my way into the
Were
Mama
they?
Dragon world. Yeah, my son
Oh.
came out right before Stockton, and so they hold a dear place in my heart.
And I'm in this space to prevent suicide at the end of the day. That is my core goal here. And if someone's choosing between leaving our church or suicide, or, we just need to keep people alive. And
Yeah.
as a lot of you know, suicide is a logical choice that LGBTQ people consider. And I hope one of the false statements that I have in the book is the idea that the resurrection will make you straight. That's kind of a sidebar, but some LGBTQ Latter-day Saints that are active in the church believe the resurrection will make them straight and this will be lifted. But many do not believe that. They believe this is their very essence. Their sexual orientation is part of who they are and all their gifts and contributions. And so they don't look at this as something that needs to be fixed or altered in the resurrection. And I love that. I didn't understand that until I talked to LGBTQ people, but I recognize if I told over the pulpit that anybody that's LGBTQ, you will be straight in the resurrection, that may increase the chance someone will choose suicide, because they may say, oh, that's my final ace in the hole. I have tried everything. I've gone on a mission. I've prayed my guts out. I've said to God, I'll give my arms, my eyes to be straight. Okay, that's the way I do it, is I just die by suicide. So that's a tone thing that every LGBTQ person has a different feeling. But for us allies or us local leaders, just a blanket statement that everybody's going to be straight is sometimes a very difficult statement. So I've learned not to say that statement. The resurrection to me is based on hope, and everybody has hope for what they want to be in the resurrection and the perfected version of them. So I'll leave that at that. Thank you.
Richard, thank you so much. We don't want to keep you. Sometimes we keep people for so long, we know they'll never come back. And we don't want you to feel like you've gotten trapped here with us because we could go all night. There's so much for us to talk about. I think we should wrap it up. And just a little, for anyone who's on the call that doesn't know about, Richard talked a little bit about his podcast and this book that's coming out. So Richard is putting himself out there and he's easy to find. And I'm so grateful for that. He's given me a lot more courage as a parent to stand up for my son. And I wouldn't have had that courage without you, Richard. So thank you. So Kayleen, unless you have anything else, I think we could wrap it up.
Yeah, no, I do want to say that we're going to continue to do this. It doesn't look like we're ending anytime soon. So we have a lot more speakers coming. Next week we have Save Buck coming. So we have a lot more. So keep coming. Like I also mentioned earlier too, we are doing our Lunch with Lisa's and friendship circles for the queer kids. And again, we just love Encircle and just keep coming and coming back. So until the house opens, we'll be here every Tuesday night and every Tuesday and Wednesday. And again, thank you, Richard. We really appreciate you coming. See you next.